Bom dia, boa tarde, boa noite, or whatever the case may be. My name is Marcus, and I am the host of the Black Brazil Today YouTube channel, as well as the blackbraziltoday.com blog, where I analyze Brazil from the perspective of race. So the origins of today's video comes from a couple of sources. Number one was a comment that somebody posted on the YouTube channel, like within the last 7 days, I would say. It was posted by a Brazilian who lives in the United States, and he was commenting on a video that I put up, I don't know, within the last 4 weeks, I would say. And the video was by a woman, a Brazilian woman, who said that in Brazil, she has been white all her life. But when she comes to the United States, she's not white. She's considered a Latina. And she was a little bit confused about that. So it led to a huge debate, a huge discussion. And I don't think there'll ever be a complete consensus on how people are categorized, right? But I wanted to compare that comment with some recent news that came out that says in Brazil, the census shows that the number of self-declared pardos, brown or mixed people, surpasses the white population for the first time. Okay. A lot going on there. I'm going to try to not make this video extremely long, but I wanted to express some of the points, some of the things that I think about this topic. You know, when I looked at that video of the Brazilian woman who said she had been, I know a lot of Brazilian people who go through that. They feel like they've been white all their lives in Brazil. They come to the United States and suddenly they're not white. Okay, you should check out that video. You know, it's something obviously I expanded on my thoughts on that, and it led to a huge discussion in the comment section. So again, I don't think we'll ever come to a consensus on this topic, which is why I'm somebody who will say, look, I don't think we'll ever know how many black, white people there are in Brazil. It's just, you know, just looking at how people look at the black population in Brazil, you have those who say, oh, Brazil is only 10% black because it only counts people who consider themselves pretos, who define themselves as pretos, specifically black. Other people say that black in Brazil means the pardo, which is the brown mixed population, plus the black population, and that they see that as being black. Then you have the movimento pardo, the mixed race movement in Brazil that says, no, pardos are a complete separate category from black people. But then when we look at the white population, we know that a vast majority of white Brazilians who claim themselves as white actually have mixed ancestry too. So this is why I say it seems like 85 to 90% of the Brazilian population have, you know, significant admixture, whether it be with of the four main or five main racial group categories in Brazil: black, white, mixed, indigenous, and Asian. Everybody's mixed with a little bit of something here or there. So what my whole argument has been, well, I've had to change my own view on that also. I don't think we'll really know how many black, white Brazilians there are, because what one person sees as black, another person sees as brown. What one other person sees as white, that person sees them as brown. So we'll never know. So I want to expand on this a little bit more. Again, I don't want to make this an hour-long video, even though I could. Let's get into what the official numbers are saying, then I'm going to backtrack. So again, number of self-declared brown people surpasses whites for the first time, according to the census. The IBGE census shows that the number of self-declared brown people has increased and managed to overtake the number of white people in Brazil. Presentation of greater ethnic diversity in the country represents greater recognition of different ethnic identities in Brazil. So this story is all over the press right now. Pardos, again, brown or mixed race people, pass whites and are the largest ethnic racial group in Brazil, according to the census numbers that are coming out. The number of self-declared whites fell, while the number of blacks and indigenous people went up. This is what I'm saying. It supports what I'm saying here. It's like people can identify however they want. So one of the main reasons these numbers are changing is because people are changing their identity. It's not necessarily that you're having a situation where there's more pardos being born than white people, even though I'm quite sure there's some of the numbers are influenced by the birth pop, you know, how many people are being born. But a significant portion of why these changes are happening is because people are defining themselves differently than they did. You know, I did a story some years ago where politicians were changing their racial identity or color identity in order to have access to funding for their political campaigns. So a lot of white people were suddenly becoming pardos, or they were becoming mixed people. Okay. But overall, most people would say the Brazilians are mixed anyway. Some just look more white, some just look more black. Some actually look just, you can't define people. This is why I'm willing to say, yes, there is a large black population in Brazil. There is a significant white population in Brazil. And then there's a large group of what they call pardos, mixed race people, who can be directly in the middle. They could be mixed looking a little bit more white. They can be mixed looking a little bit more black. Then you have a nice percentage of people that are actually just more of indigenous ancestry. That's why I said you have to look at race numbers in Brazil, color classifications, and percentages with a grain of salt, because there's no way it's going to ever be an exact count. Okay. So again, before I get into this, I'm talking about this because of the Brazilian woman who was white all her life in Brazil, came to the US. Now she's Latina. The comment of the person who looked at that woman and says, no, she's a parda. She's mixed. Look at her. She's mixed. It was news to me, because as I saw people debating what this woman looked like, to me, I just said, woman looks white to me. I mean, can we not have white people who have some degree of mixed blood, right? Let me expand on that a little bit more. If 90% of Brazilians are actually pardos, let's imagine the whole population of Brazil is pardos. To me, that's not going to solve any problem, because if people get discriminated based on what they look like, there are going to be pardos who look more black and pardos who look more white. If that's the case and discrimination is based on phenotype, and somebody goes for a job, who's going to get it if you got two pardos, one looking more black and one more looking more white? That's the question. Famous Brazilians. So you can just look at a few Brazilian celebrities and see why this question is so complex. I mean, for the commenter on the YouTube channel comment section to say that the girl who considered herself white in Brazil, but then she came to the US and was known as seen as Latina, would you really put that same woman in the same category as Neymar or Mano Brown, the rapper, one of the most important rappers in Brazil's, music history, Mano Brown of the Racionais MCs? You look at Mano Brown and you look at the girl from the video, I'm like, to me, they don't belong in the same category, even though you could say both of them are whatever degree of mixture, which is what I'm saying. It doesn't, when you put everybody in a pardo category, there's still going to be inequalities. How do you deal with people who are of white and indigenous ancestry? How do you deal with people who are black and Asian ancestry? It goes on and on. So I don't think just lumping everybody as pardos is really going to solve the problem, because it's still going to come out. When you have families, mixed families, where there's siblings in the family that come out darker, looking more black, you got some who are just totally in the middle, and some who just push a little closer to the white side. You see that in Brazilian families. I've seen it in American families. So what is the solution there? I'm not saying this that because people should be divided up, but if we can agree that you have racial discrimination, it says, okay, it's going to be based on what you look like. Nobody's going to ask you to show them your DNA card, because if that was the case, and I'm not somebody who supports this DNA admixture studies, because from what I've read, it seems like the science is not there to be able to give somebody an accurate percentage breakdown of what racial groups they have in their blood. I'm sure anybody who's followed Brazil knows some of the celebrities there. This is just a small sample of what, Brazilians can look like. Do you consider Fernando Henrique Cardoso, former Brazilian president and sociologist, do you consider this to be a white guy? He might be socially white, as they say in Brazil, because he was the president. How's the president going to be black? That's how some people think. FHC, as they call him, is considered white, even though he's not. And he's actually admitted that he's not white. What do you do with people like Caetano Veloso? You look at pictures of Caetano Veloso when he was in his 20s and early 30s. There's no way you could look at that guy and say that's a white guy, right? Maybe you say, I don't know. Caetano Veloso is kind of, to me, he's kind of indefinable. He's somewhere in the middle. You see this guy, and this is why, in some ways, I suggest there should be a mixed white and a mixed black category. You got people who look clearly black, people who look clearly white. Then you got white people who got mixed ancestry, and you got black people who got mixed ancestry. Then you got the whole indigenous question. So there's no simple solution to this question. The other thing I want to point out is that this whole thing happens in the United States as well. Celebrities you never knew were at least partially Native American. I mean, Angelina Jolie, Elvis Presley, Heather Locklear, I mean, look at some of these names: Miley Cyrus, Chuck Norris. I mean, that's really intriguing. I can't really say that all of these people, absolutely had, you know, everything that we see, we have to take with a grain of salt. But some of these people, I can actually look at them and say, okay, I can see that he's mixed with something. But in the United States, as long as you don't have African ancestry, you can still consider yourself white. So what I'm confused about what's going on in Brazil is that years ago, the girl who saw herself as white for all of her life in Brazil, she comes to the United States, now she's a Latina. 15 years ago, nobody would have classified that woman as a parda. And this was based on one comment that somebody made. I can't say how everybody looks at her. To me, she looks like a white girl. Okay, fine. She's got a little bit of mixture. Good. It's probably true. But to me, I mean, I see a white woman there. I don't know how. It's a debate that can keep going on and on forever. So let me get into the data for now. Now, the IBGE is Brazil's geography and statistics department. So they go around the country and take the data from the people. They go door to door and ask people, how do you define yourself according to the 5 color color classifications in Brazil: preto, black; pardo, brown, mixed; branco, white; indigenous, indigena, indigenous or Native American, Native Brazilian, if you prefer; and people of Asian descent. Those are the 5 choices that people have. So they go door to door. And the key you have to understand about the IBGE statistics is that they have to write down whatever that person says. So if you got a person who is the color of, say, I don't know, Wesley Snipes, if that person says that they're brown, you're going to have to write down brown. So that's the way the IBGE works in Brazil. So let's get into this story. The survey showed that for the first time in the history of the census, the number of people who consider themselves brown or mixed race, pardos rather, has exceeded that of whites. This comes amid greater recognition of ethnic identities in Brazil over the years. Number of self-declared brown, black, and indigenous people increases while the white population decreases. According to the census, 91.2 million Brazilians consider themselves to be pardos or brown mixed race people, making up 45.3% of the entire population, which means for the first time in the history of the census, the majority of the Brazilian population consider themselves brown in a move towards greater recognition of identidade preta or parda, black or brown identity. And this is what I said at the beginning. Like, it's not just birth rates there. A lot of people are switching categories after they come into a certain recognition of their identity. There's more color in the face of Brazil. In 2012, 46.3% of people consider themselves whites, dropping to 43% in 2021. In that same period, those defining themselves as preta went from 7.4 to 9.1%. It's up to 10% now, from what I understand. From 2012 to 2021, the pardo or brown mixed race category went from 45.6 to 47%, which means it is ahead of the white population. Now, for those who consider blacks and browns as part of the black population, that would mean that 56% of people are considered black. But as I said, I no longer subscribe to that. I'm going to just say it is what it is. In reality, the pardo population should probably even, as you can see, some of the numbers of whites probably moved over to the pardo category too, which explains you got a 1.4% increase in pardos here. All right. And while you have an almost 3%, or what is it, a more than a 3% drop in the white population. How do you explain that? People are shifting their identity. That's one of the main reasons. With this change, the number of people who consider themselves white has fallen to 43.5%, making up 88.2 million people. This change in people's racial perception is not new. Since the 2000s, the number of people who identify as black or brown has increased. In the last census, the number of people who consider themselves as brown was 43.1%, which represents an increase of 2.2%. The number of black people was 7.6% in 2010, and today it is 10.2%, an increase of 42.3% over the last 12 years. I would argue that's still a drastic undercount. To me, a large number, I wouldn't say the majority, but I would say a large number of the pardo population could still probably classify themselves as black. So I would say over the next few years, the next 20 years, we'll see an increase, an even larger increase of pardos and pretos, blacks and browns, as more people continue to shift their identity after an analysis of their own, how they see themselves. Bigger presence of blacks in the country reflects racial recognition. This is from the Agência Brasil website. The biggest growth in self-declaration was among the indigenous population, which increased by 89% between 2010 and 2022. The survey shows that 0.8% of Brazilians consider themselves indigenous, around 1.6 million compared to 0.5% in 2010. That's a whole nother story. People who have written about the indigenous Indian Native American population in Brazil say that for many decades, people of indigenous ancestry have defined themselves as pardos. So besides the growing number of pardos and the growing number of pretos, we can see in the next 20 years, there's probably going to be a growth in the indigenous population as people who are probably classified as white or brown move over into the Indian population and reclaim their Indian ancestry. There's a lot of reports that show that that's going to be a trend as well. And we've already seen it in this report to show that that is actually true. The rate with the biggest drop was that of the yellow or Asian population, because in the Brazilian census, people of Asian descent are classified as amarelo, meaning yellow. So this represents the Asian population, which fell 0.6%. The reason for this was an improvement in the survey system, which asked people about the possibility of an Asian origin. The specification was intended to ensure that the general population understood what this ethnic declaration meant and to avoid misunderstandings. This is a picture of some people in Bahia. Bahia saw an increase of people who define themselves as specifically preto, or preta meaning black. So I would say that there's a large percentage of people moving over from the brown mixed population category classification over to the preta population. The data was released at the headquarters of the Olodum Bloco Afro in Salvador, Bahia, which I just said. These people here are from Bahia. Salvador is the capital with the highest number of self-declared pretos, or specifically black people in the country, making up 22.5% of the population. Anybody who's been to Bahia will see that there are a lot of black, dark-skinned people that live in Bahia. If you've ever been to Bahia, or if you're just into international music, you'll understand the cultural and historic group known as Olodum, the Bloco, the drum troupe that acts as a cultural group that they've performed with. You've seen them in Michael Jackson videos. You've seen them in the Paul Simon videos. Olodum has a long history in terms of cultural recognition of black people in the state of Bahia. So I'm curious to know what you all thought about this piece today. There's so many places I could go with this particular article, and I'm sure the debate is going to go on. I'm not saying there's any one solution to this. Like I said, I just believe that most people in Brazil are of some degree of mixture. Some are going to look closer to white. Some are going to look closer to black. Some are going to look just totally indefinable. Some are going to look more indigenous. Some are going to look more Asian. So if we consider that the entire Brazilian population is mixed to some degree, to me, that really doesn't solve the issue. Because if racial discrimination is based on what you look like, you can be mixed, but you look black. You could be mixed, but you look closer to white. Who's going to be in a better situation there if people are judged based on their phenotype? I have to also support what this particular person says in this article from Global. An ex-researcher of the IBGE, again, the Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, points out problems in the definition of black as the sum of blacks and browns. And this is something I've had to make a transition in my own thought. I have to say that as well. I say that, okay, pretos are people who define themselves specifically as black, but you cannot claim all pardos as black. I've seen too many pardos in Brazil who you just cannot classify. So I totally agree with what this guy is saying. Again, just to show you, this is a story that's pretty big. This is from December 22nd, which was about, almost a week ago, or a little, by this time I get this video up, it's going to be over a week. But, census 2022 census, for the first time, Brazil declares itself more brown than white. Black and indigenous populations also grow. So I'm going to cut the video here. As I said, I didn't want to, this is a topic that I could talk about forever, and I love the debate. But I want to cut the video here. Ask you to drop a comment in the comment section here. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. If you've seen more than a few videos that you like, click on the notification bell so you get notified when I put up new videos. Support the channel. if you like my channel, definitely consider dropping a super thanks, dropping a couple of dollars in my Cash App. You see the Cash App address in the description. It's Mr. Marcus 72, MrMarquez 72. And with that said, I'm going to end this video here and request that you all come back and check out the next video that I post.